friends. Welcome to episode 360 of School Librarians United. I'm your host, Amy Herman. This podcast is dedicated to the issues and challenges school librarians face every day. As a school librarian in my 19th year, I knew I wanted a podcast which addressed the nuts and bolts of running a successful library program. I don't claim to have the answers, but I hope that this is a platform to share resources and exchange ideas. Now is a perfect time to mention that all the ideas and opinions expressed in this podcast by myself, my interview guests, and listeners who reach out to the podcast are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. When incorporating research, I always make sure to cite my sources. So whether you are a novice or a veteran school librarian, this podcast has something for you. I welcome you and all listeners to reach out with your feedback and episode suggestions. You can reach me on Facebook on X, formerly known as Twitter. My handle is at LMS_United. On Threads and Instagram, you can find me at School Librarians United, and on Blue Sky at SLU Podcast, or the email address schoollibrariansunited@gmail.com. If you include your mailing address, I'll be sure to send you a podcast sticker. Today's episode focuses on a fantastic session I had the pleasure of attending while visiting Williamsburg, Virginia, and the annual conference for school librarians this past November. To our listeners who are working in the elementary and middle school libraries, even though today's conversation focuses on high school math and science, I hope you continue to listen all the way to the end. I can guarantee there is plenty of relatable perspective and teaching strategies across the grade levels. And as a K-12 certified professional, there is always a chance you may find yourself working in a high school library. And now for today's episode, bringing math and science into your high school library, and my conversation with Meagan Major. Meagan Major, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about this.
Well, and I am too. Given the topic of today's episode, listeners are going to be interested to know that your teaching career did not, in fact, start out as a math or science teacher. Please introduce yourself, tell us about your work in schools, and especially in the field of school librarianship.
Hi, I'm Meagan Major. I am a fifth-year librarian this year in Loudoun County, Virginia. And prior to being a librarian, I was a high school history and geography teacher for 10 years. This is year 15 in schools for me, but I do not have any background in math or science beyond what I taught in my IB geography classes. So I got really deep into some environmental science for a while in geography. And I am very good at one very specific type of statistical test and analysis. And I can explain how to do it and how it works, and absolutely nothing else. I have learned over the last 2 years or so that I likely could not pass a basic algebra class right now.
Okay. So, friends, I've been very candid about my failings and things for which I have very little background or understanding. What I will say is something that is consistent with school librarians is even if we did not grow up feeling passionately about a particular area of study, it is not hard for professionally trained librarians to instantly espouse that need to know more about a particular topic. I can foster fascination in anything. The fact that I don't understand it is beside the point, but I absolutely understand where the ability to shift away from something for which we feel very comfortable and grounded into areas for which we I got to support these teachers. I guess I better start figuring this out in a way that makes sense, not only to me, but perhaps the students in the classroom who are also finding themselves a little overwhelmed. So no, I love that. I will say kudos to you. You presented at your state conference in your 5th year of librarianship. It took me 5 years just to find the time and the motivation to step away from my job to go to my national conference, let alone present at my national conference.
I am a big believer in professional development that helps you walk away with something in hand, something that you can take and use in your school. So I have been like teaching and leading professional development for a while, both in social studies. I worked when I was teaching in the classroom, I was a workshop leader for the International Baccalaureate. So I led IB workshops for new teachers in IB geography. And I think my basis for it is like, I am never going to be like the number one expert in the room, but I am 100% of the time happy to give you whatever I have.
Make the connection for me, please, because it sounds like you enjoyed your work in the subject areas. You enjoyed being a social studies teacher and leading professional development in that area. What was that light bulb moment for you to say, you know what, there's something else I'm meant to do, and I'm going to explore this, leadership in the library?
So I have always been a reader. I am a book girly through and through. I used to get my books taken away in elementary school. I would be reading under my desk while my teacher was teaching. And I also have ADHD, and I am the queen of the spur of the moment decisions. So after like my first 5 years teaching, I had just moved to a new school, and I was talking to my husband and some of my friends. I was teaching at that time with just a bachelor's degree and a teaching certification. And I was like, if I am going to go and get my master's in this, I need to pick something that I care about, and I need to do it now, like while I am ready for it, like while it's on my brain. Otherwise, I'm going to stop thinking about it, and then it's going to be gone for another 5 years. And who's to say? So I was kind of trolling around looking. Our local university, George Mason, offers several different like master's programs in education, but I knew I didn't really want to go into like school administration. That was just like not the path for me. I wanted more contact with kids. I still wanted to be like teaching and working like one-on-one or in groups with kids, but I was kind of starting to burn out a little bit as a classroom teacher. Our class sizes kept growing. At one point, I had 32 kids in both of my IB classes, and it was just like the grading and the planning and all of it were brutal. So that fall, honestly, like the fall of 2016 was just kind of a blur for a myriad of reasons. It was a wild time in the world, and I had just finished my IB training to become a workshop leader and a site visitor for IB. And I was like, man, that was like 3 months of training stuff. I've got so much free time now. Maybe I should apply to grad school. So I did. And I found the program at Old Dominion University in Virginia, and they were running a tuition discount at that time. I got like 25% off my tuition for grad school because I was currently a teacher, and they had partnered with our district who was really like pushing hard to get new librarians in. I went to an interest meeting in like the first week of December. I came home and I told my husband, I think I'm going to be a librarian. And he said, okay. Uh, and I applied, and 2 weeks later, they said, okay, great, you're in. Your classes start in 3 weeks. Here's your schedule. So I finished my program, and I ended up actually not taking a library job for almost 2 years after I finished my grad school program. I applied for a couple of jobs here and there. There was a job that had opened up at the school I was working at. Like, I was still in grad school at the time. They were 100% right not to hire me. I had no idea what I was doing. And then a position opened up at the school that I am currently at. And I had a bunch of friends from other schools who were working there at the time. The current librarian there was a friend of mine from grad school, and she reached out and said, hey, I'd love to have you come and work with me. And so I interviewed and got the job, and I have been there for the last 5 years.
Well, and things happen for a reason. I think that we have to trust our instincts. Your husband sounds like a very smart person, and
He's great.
yes,
I would not be able to do any of this without
well,
him.
I think our partners are wise to back off and just recognize we know what we're doing, and there's nothing impulsive about what we do. It's very, very well thought out. So no, I love that for you, and Virginia's lucky to have you. This is fantastic, especially somebody as young as you are in the profession, ready to lead trainings, and that's no experience is ever wasted. And regardless of when or how you come to this profession, the things that made you who you are leading up to this point are always going to find their way into your life as a librarian. The difference is, instead of impacting the students in your immediate classroom, you now have the potential to impact the entire school and possibly the district. And so it's very exciting. I do want to belatedly apologize for my rather aggressive sales pitch and in pouncing on you right after you had presented this particular session at the Virginia Association of School Librarians annual conference this past November. And friends, a couple of you have also fallen victim to my rather aggressive nature when it comes to seizing on an opportunity to find a willing individual to share the session they had just very, and honestly, I'm sure you were still coming off of that post presentation high. And how could you possibly say no? Let's do this again, but press record. And that really is, friends. Sometimes people will see me at a conference and I won't stay in a session very long because I already know I've already given my information to you. We're going to have this conversation later. I've got to go, I sort of poach this, some people call it being a talent scout. Other people call it poaching, whatever you call it. It's how we are able to do an episode as often as we do. And that is because of generous experts like yourself. I will describe what I remember. And that was that the room was absolutely packed because I didn't get there at the beginning of your session. I got there at the middle of your session. And so absolutely, it was like, what? I walked in, I was like, oh, this is very telling when you walk in and there's no place to sit. I remember there were people on the floor, sitting on the floor with their laptops in their laps. And then there were people standing at the back of the room in a room that was about half the size it needed to be to accommodate as many people who had decided to come see your session. To say that the situation was violating several fire codes is no exaggeration. These attendees were wrapped, hanging on everything you were talking about. And I'm just going to say it right now. I have never, in the 8 years of being a podcaster, been able to feature a session or an episode so singularly focused on math and science in this way, and how we can support what's happening in the classroom in such a direct fashion. It's so refreshing.
I'm really glad about that because this is I have referred in the past to our math department as my white whale. I started this job and was like, this is going to be what I do. And mostly because I, as a person, don't like to be told that something is not possible. So I remember in grad school when I talked to other librarians, they were like, you can try, but you're never going to get math to come to the library. Maybe you might have a teacher who really wants to do a, some sort of in-depth research project, and you might get to be able to talk about presentation skills. But, we know there's reasons for math to come to the library, but trying to get the math teachers in is just it's too hard.
I will say I have had the math teachers come into my room. It's because we're short on subs. and they just need a warm body. And if I have glass classrooms, so I'm sitting at the entrance. I can monitor the entrance. I can monitor the glass classroom because I can see all of you, and I've taken attendance. So yes, I get them sometimes when we are short on subs. I get them sometimes when we have a medical emergency in the classroom. In other words, somebody has passed out, fainted, or thrown up, and we need to leave that classroom and move someplace else. I've also seen them down there as well. So yes, if we've had a medical emergency or we are short on subs, that is it. That's the only time they come down.
Well, I will say, I am sure that there are math teachers in our building who genuinely hate to see me coming. Because if they are like, no, not interested, full stop, like, absolutely, okay. But like, if you give me an inch on that, like, I will make the plans for you. I will come in and get everything together. And I will keep checking back with you to figure out like how we're going to do this. Because I think it's really important, not just like for the teachers, but also for our students to be able to see how many different ways a library can support a population and a building, and be able to like make those connections, whether they're college bound or going into a job or a trade. There's so many things other than like books and research that you can do.
I think where we need to be careful is that when we, as librarians and resource experts, we do not come across to our fellow educators as being know-it-alls. We don't want to ever make them feel like we are judging them or we know more than they do, because they're the experts in that field. And we sort of have expanded our reach to positively impact every professional we work with in the school, whether they're administrators, they're in our student service center, or they are educators in the classroom. That is something that we have willingly and happily taken on, is this opportunity to work with everybody. And for so many of us, that is one of the things we love about our jobs. But we have to do so in a way that does not seem off-putting. We do not want anybody to feel defensive. Sometimes just quietly sending some resources their way just to pique their interest, something that might interest them on some level. But no, definitely, there is you've got to be careful in how you approach people to make sure that we don't alienate them or they become somewhat defensive because they aren't coming down to the library or the Learning Commons.
Yeah, I think one of the ways that we kind of initially like made contact with some of our maybe more reluctant departments was like just starting a conversation with like, can you tell me about what your class learns? What are you guys doing right now? And they always say, oh my gosh, it would be great to come to the library, but I'm just not sure what we would do there. Or, we're so tight on time because we've got this standardized testing that's happening, which is a great opportunity to say like, hey, maybe like we could plan a review activity or a lesson. We love Breakout EDU. We have a school-wide subscription now, so all of our teachers have access to the online platform. But when we first started out, we had like 2 breakout boxes, and my former co-librarian and I would go through and find the game that corresponded to whatever they were teaching and put it all together and print everything. And so all they had to do was bring their class down. And I think just having like one day or even half a block where they didn't have to be the only person in charge of that room really went a long way towards bolstering some of those relationships.
Well, and it does take one person to then share with the department, and you'll find that word spreads quickly when they realize just how sort of ready-made, just bring the kids and we're going to run the show. I do want to mention, friends, the hyperlinks embedded throughout your presentation are a veritable treasure trove for newbies like myself who find the entire undertaking of collaborating with math and science incredibly intimidating.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm excited because I know you're going to give us a little bit of a rundown about the kinds of things. And friends, it's not just one or two things in math and one or two things in science. No, you're going to want to make sure that you bookmark these resources and revisit them when you have a chance to fully appreciate when a librarian makes up their mind to enhance and augment and supplement areas of, in this case, math and science. It's gold. It's absolute gold. We're going to start. You've got step one, the advice that was meant for a school librarian just like me, and that is start small. So if you would you give us some examples of what do you mean by starting small?
So at my school, the geometry and algebra 2 teams are the teams where we have like the most number of students and the most number of classes. And I'm not going to lie to you, my knowledge of both geometry and algebra 2 is very small, and I was very intimidated with that. I was like, okay, like where can we start? And we have a number of both math and science electives and like science classes where there's maybe only one teacher who teaches it, or it's a class that's not tied to standardized testing, where they have a little bit more flexibility. So we have a conceptual physics class, and they are not tied to any kind of standardized testing. It's a class for students who maybe haven't done super well in science or haven't really enjoyed a science class very much before. So it's a lot more hands-on kind of activities. And we used some of those classes as kind of like an entry point. And then also just like working based off of who you already have a relationship with in the building. We have a data science teacher who I love. He's phenomenal. And he is also teaching, this is now his second year teaching this class. It's a new class for us. It's a new curriculum for the county. And he was sort of making his resources like as he went for it. They didn't have a lot that the county like provided for it other than sort of a rough outline of here are the things at some point this year that you should probably cover. And so anytime that first year that I was like, hey, I was thinking about data science and I thought about maybe trying this thing. He was like, yes, take them. Absolutely, 100%. Like, what do you want to do? They're yours.
I love it. But that makes so much sense because you identify areas where people might feel overwhelmed. They may feel like they don't have a team. You know, I think it's a different story altogether when you're tapping a subject that's taught across the board by three or four different people. All of a sudden, you've got an automatic team. You've got somebody who's teaching somebody something once or something for the first time.
Yeah.
Those are fantastic. You really, really do. Those are, when you find out somebody's teaching something for the first time, you're like, oh, this is going to be fun.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, and especially because I think you want to make sure, you know, we all have egos. We all have egos. And we absolutely, I know for us, this year, we're going to be having a couple teachers pick up some classes that we've been offering online. And if you're online in Virginia, anything like here in the state of Michigan, anytime one of our students takes an online class, that's money that leaves our district. Like that's money, our per capita, that leaves the district and pays another educator, not one of us. And that's for us, that really is a concern because we want to make sure that when our students are in our buildings, we're the ones teaching them. So all of a sudden next year, we're going to have a class that's never been offered in person. It's now going to be offered in person. Now I was like pulling all these resources together because it was like, I got you, boo. We're going to do this. It's going to be fine.
Yes.
All right. Step number 2, it's not just research. Thank you. Absolutely. Like I said, some of us are offering a room that doesn't have puke in it, and they're very excited. So yes, it's not just research. What kinds of ways do you help your teachers when it's going outside of the area of research?
Our entry point a lot of the time especially with math and science, but even with some of our world language classes or our like fine arts classes, is doing the breakout games. And that has been like a huge way that like we don't have to necessarily learn an entire math curriculum. I am now moderately good at doing functions in algebra. I did learn this year, after I gave the wrong answer to several students, that any number to the power of 0 is 1, not 0. Uh, that was a fun surprise for all of us.
Can I just stop you right there? I think you need to, if you aren't naturally humble, I think that there is reason to take on a willingness to make yourself vulnerable in front of not just your peers, but to be fully transparent with your students when you are learning as they go. And nobody is expected to be an expert in everything. And I think it's important for the young people we work with, irrespective of their age, that we're never done learning. And we are always in a position to learn new things, and we are always better for it. But there's nothing shameful about not knowing everything when you're standing in front of a room full of students.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell our students all the time, especially when they come for math and science stuff, if they're in there for a historical research lesson, like, yeah, that is something I'm an expert on. I'm really good at it. But like, if you're coming in for like a math review activity or you're doing high level science research, like, I can teach you the background skills for it, but like, I promise you, like with this math activity, like I figured it out. You can do it too. They're like, okay, but like you're a grown up. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. Let me tell you how bad I am at this.
But again, I think it's important that our students recognize that we are lifelong learners.
Yeah. And it gives them a level of resilience that I think they don't necessarily come to us with all the time. And being able to make mistakes in front of them and correct them and let them see that, you know what, like, yeah, I'm so sorry I told you the wrong answer. You were, in fact, correct about that. You're incredible. That's fantastic. Like, you are so smart. And, like, I made a mistake, and guess what? Nothing bad happened. And they're like, oh, okay.
Yes. As they say in my house, did you die? And you're like, no, I did not die. And they're like, I guess it's fine then, right? Yeah, that my at one point when my children were in high school, and the reaction at the dinner table was, did you die? They're like, no. You're like, okay, well, here we go. Let's keep on going. Pick up those shattered pieces and let's move on. Yes. So step 3, make it convenient. This is absolute genius, and it really could apply. This kind of advice would work really in any effort that a school librarian has in getting classes to schedule time in their Learning Commons /library and their spaces, and hoping to get an enthusiastic response by teachers, because time is precious. I mean, time is precious.
Yes.
So what is it that you do that really is a home run when it comes to really trying to make this convenient for your teachers?
I like to start by picking the absolute worst days of the entire school year to offer things: the 2 days before Thanksgiving and the last week before winter break, the time when there are no students actually showing up and you can't really teach anything new because half your class is out, and the chance that they come back from winter break remembering any of the things that you taught them that week is 0. But like, you also don't want to just throw on a movie and call it a day. You still want them to get some like skills and learning, but like maybe also have a little fun as like a little gift to the students, right? We can make learning fun on occasion. And we really like to offer, my first co-librarian, Lindsay, and I came up with this. We like to offer, we call it a pop-up. And we put out a like schedule of like what days our pop-up is available. And we're like, okay, here are the things you can request on those days. And first come, first serve. My current co and I just did this like right before spring break for not the first week back, but the following week. We are doing a pop-up poetry stations for our English classes. It's National Poetry Month, and we wanted to offer some like activities for them. My last co-librarian had done some poetry stations the couple years before, and they overall had gone really well. So we are doing a little bit of borrowing, a little bit of reimagining some of them, bringing in some new topics for the kids who have done them before, but getting them just like exposed to some poetry and ideas. And even the teachers who are like, oh, we have a standard of learning test coming up, we've got an AP exam, are still like, okay, well, if it's half a block, like we can take that time, do a little poetry introduction, and maybe have a little bit of fun with it too.
If I'm correct that you work under a block schedule, and am I correct? Those are 90-minute class periods?
Ours are 84, but yeah, they're very long.
Yes. Yeah. 84 minutes. Yes. And friends, if you've never taught block, you know that the best recommendation is to chunk those times so that you aren't doing the same thing from start to finish. That's a death knell. You want to lose your kids. Teach, have one objective and work and hammer it home for 84 minutes. That's just terrible. So no, I love that. So when somebody gives you, I'm going to give you 40 minutes. Yeah. You're like, that's fine. I'll take the 40 minutes. And all of a sudden you're a hero. You've obtained hero status.
Yeah. And especially those days, like where it's just so hard to figure out like how to fill the time. I know you're in Michigan, so this is very much like a Virginia problem, but we had way more snow days this year than we have had in the last couple of years. And a bunch of them all fell on, we have A days and B days because we've got the blocks. So you see half your kids on A days and half your kids on B days. And we lost a bunch of B days this year to snow, which means that all the A-day classes were way ahead. We had, at one point, we had about 9 inches of snow and we were off for a week. I know. In our defense, it did turn to ice very quickly. We have family in Buffalo, and my sister-in-law was like, that's insane.
Well, and forgive me, but, Virginia is not known to be a flat state. It is not a flat state. You have some terrain, do you not? You do have areas. Yes, you do.
We do.
And so it's we're not talking like Arizona flat. We're talking about there are definitely it is not a straight shot. You have to appreciate this isn't always easy. But I love this that you have found ways to support the teachers in things for which they could not have possibly anticipated at the beginning of the school year. You've come to the rescue. You've made a lot of friends.
Right.
Step 4 is play to your strengths. Now, am I correct that you're talking not just about the strengths that you as a professional possess, but also the resources you might be enriched with in your particular space where you work?
Yeah, absolutely. So our district has a contract with Mackin to buy all of our books. And we also were very fortunate. We get Mackin Makerspace funds each year as well, which I absolutely love. And also there are only so many sets of Kiva planks that you can buy for a high school. One of the resources available, my little plug here for this, is you can get through Mackin Makerspace a Breakout EDU kit and a year-long subscription. And so we started out, my first co and I started out with one kit and like one subscription that we shared. And we offered our first like Thanksgiving pop-up, and everyone was like, yes, we want all of this. Please let us bring our absolutely feral children and leave them with you. And it was so much fun. Like, we had a great time putting it together and exploring it. And we have 2 additional kits now and the school-wide breakout subscription. And even though the teachers have access to all the materials and like can check out the kits, they almost always will still bring them to us to do the games, which is really nice. And then we just also have a ton of like random supplies and are like, hey, you're doing a collage. Like, guess what? We have 700 magazines. Come on down and use our stuff. And at the very least, it gets somebody in who wasn't coming before.
What we have to offer is sometimes so outside the realm of predictability. You have the photos that you included. I imagine this was with your physics classes.
Yes.
And the mousetrap cars.
Yes.
I've never seen this work in person.
That also is a Meagan Makerspace purchase. You can get a set of 20 mousetrap vehicles that the kids assemble, and they put different pieces on, and they can mess with the tension and the friction and all those like very complicated science words. Basically, depending on how they design their car, they use their knowledge of physics. And then once they, as a team, design their cars, we took them out in the main hallway and let them race them. And they got to measure and like look at the composition of all the different cars. We did not have enough. The first year we did it, we did not have enough supplies for all of the classes. So we just ordered a bunch of like Amazon mousetraps, which are very cheap. And then got people in the school to donate old CDs and DVDs to use as the wheels. And we have a very large box of CDs remaining, and kids were like, okay, well, the CDs aren't getting any traction, so how can we fix that? And so we took a hot glue gun and put hot glue around the outside edge of the CD to get it more like grip. And honestly, like, I learned just as much as the kids did, but it was really fun.
Absolutely. Step 5 is be visible. And this looks different in everyone's building depending on the kind of communications and all building communications. But what has worked best for you when it comes to making sure your program is promoted and people know about it?
We do like as much in-house professional development as our admin will allow. So anytime there is a share fair or our back to school PD, we are running something just to like let people know what's going on. This year we did like a makerspace one. We've got a Cricut maker. We've got 3D printers. So we brought that stuff down to our PD session, and we did like a 2-minute rundown of the stuff that we've got and how we've used it in the past. And then we said, okay, we have 12 more minutes, like go play with it and like make something. And we ended up getting like several classes in to do 3D printing. We've done PD on like, we have a podcast studio that we got a grant for. And so we let people come and like try out the podcast stuff. We've got a like pod tracks board and the microphone and headphones and stuff at school, which is really fun. And we have a couple of classes that like regularly will now do a podcast project every year. And so I think just like being out there has been really big for us. And then when we do stuff with classes or like do stuff for people, they a lot of times they're like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I could have done this otherwise. And my pitch is always like, well, when somebody asks you how you did it or like what you did, just tell them you came to the library. And the word of mouth is very helpful.
Absolutely. And then there's almost this like expectation of equity. You've got these teachers are like, wait, you did this for them? Yep. I'd sign me up.
Yes.
So, step 6, don't reinvent the wheel. It's not just sage advice, because slide 8 and 9 are an absolute gift to our listening audience. I'm hoping they're opening it up right now on their devices, because fellow school librarians can access everything you've been describing, would you go into some detail about slide 8 and 9?
Yeah, absolutely. So slide 8 is some of the more specific stuff that we've done. My very favorite activity that one of my favorite activities that I've ever put together as a librarian is our Algebra 1 SOL Carnival of Math. And this started out as an absolutely wild idea because one of our math teachers said, "Hey, I want to do some SOL review, maybe a game in the library." And I said, "Cool. What do they need to review?" And he said, "Haha, everything." And I said, "Great." And I was like, "Okay, what if we make it more like game-based?" And I was like, "Oh, we could do carnival games." And so that is how the Carnival of Math was born. And I went to some of their CLT meetings and we kind of broke down the 6 areas where they thought their students were going to need the most support to review for the standardized test. And then I made them give me a bunch of problems. And then I tried to solve the problems. And then they said, "Oh, honey, that's not how we do that." And I said, "Well, that's embarrassing." And then they showed me how to do it right. And I learned a little bit of math. I'm really good at factoring now, which is great because it's like a 5th grade skill. But we had all of the Algebra 1 classes come and do it. I think it was 12 classes total. And it was so much fun. I made a packet. There was a ring toss game. There was a jumbo dice roll game. There was a magnetic fishing game. And I borrowed a bunch of stuff from our student government classes, from their pep rally games and things. And it was the best time. And we're going to do it again this year. And I've had 2 other schools reach out in the last couple of weeks and say that they're giving it a try and that it has gone pretty well for them. So I'm pretty proud of that one. It was so much fun.
Again, I mean, you've got hyperlinks for Algebra 1 and 2, geometry, data science, probability and statistics, biology, chemistry, earth and environmental science, and physics. So at some point, somebody's going to find something here that even if it's a start and then they can adapt it to their own needs. And I love that you aren't proprietary and you're not putting this behind teacher pay teacher. Thank you very much. I love that you recognize that when this is hand holding at its best. Friends, ask a school librarian to walk you through something, and Megan's done just that. She's provided you with everything you could possibly need to take an idea that's been tried and true in Megan's space and modify it to adapt to your students' needs, your class's needs, your spaces, whatever limitations you might have in your space, whether it's time or physical space or resources. I love it because you recognize that from this point on, it's not enough for you to just stand at the front of the room and say, "Hey, don't forget about math and science." No, you're like, "I'm going to actually show you what's worked in my school, and you're going to be an instant hero."
Yeah, I think that for me, professional development is really most valuable when I come out of it and can try something right away. I love high-level academic theory, but ain't nobody got time for that right now, you know? And I will say, if you are looking at slide 9 at all of these resources, I'm putting them out there with the caveat that I told Amy earlier, very little that I do is 100% original to me. Everything on here is either in collaboration with a team or department, or something I've worked on with another librarian, or something I borrowed from somebody and tweaked. And I do try to give as much recognition of that where I can, but not all of it has the attribution that it probably should. So please do not go into this wow, you created all of these from scratch. I promise you, I did not. Everything is adapted and borrowed and like born from a spirit of collaboration, which is why I want to like be able to share it with other people as well.
Well, and as we often say in this space, a rising tide lifts all boats. You know, between this conversation and the resources you've so graciously offered, other librarians tuning in, even if they take one idea and it builds on this, all of a sudden that kind of momentum can really take off. And we're in the business of helping each other, supporting one another. This is PD. That there are plenty of people and friends. We're coming up into the summer already. Approach your administrators and ask, say, hey, listen, I know I have to get a couple hours of professional development. And since you don't offer any for school librarians and you're not going to send me to my national conference, what about I listen to, say, 5 episodes and then show how they're going to address specific needs in our space and how I'm going to raise, academic achievement or expand our reach. That happens all the time. And people will reach out to me and say, hey, can we use your episodes in our syllabus? Can we use your episodes in our PD? Friends, the answer is always yes. You don't have to reach out. You don't have to ask, but you also just know the answer is always yes. If you would like to use episodes from the show as your PD, please know you are 100% always welcome because, again, this is about making sure that school librarians have what they need to be able to secure not only their current job, but to be able to make sure that they can, navigate the demands that they may or may not see coming.
Exactly.
Until they're right there. You've got a job opportunity. You want to get ready for that job. I promise you we've got an episode for that. Meagan Major, this has been an absolute delight. I am so grateful. Would you give us an idea of the best way to reach out to you if listeners have any questions?
Yeah, absolutely. I am on Instagram at Major in Books. And honestly, like my email address for school is on those slides. I am almost always better at getting back to people on email than anywhere else. I would love to say that I check my Instagram DMs on my professional account more than like once a week, but it doesn't usually happen. I'm usually on my personal account. So if you have something pressing, email is usually the best option, but I would love if you follow me on Instagram as well. And if you give me a week or so, I'm sure I will follow you back.
Meagan Major, I'm so grateful. You and I are both on spring break right now. And this has been really a treat. And I'm so grateful. Thank you so much. And thank you in advance for the many people who are going to be looking at this going, I wasn't at Vassal. I didn't see you present all of this, but I can tell this is absolutely going to be transformative in my space.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And I hope it's helpful for somebody out there.
Friends, if you found this episode helpful, please share it out with your team, your PLN, and on social media. Be sure to follow on your favorite podcatcher so you'll never miss an episode. And if you really like listening today, consider leaving a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Reviews help others find us. If you're curious to know how often your state or country has been featured on the podcast, then simply click on the link which can be found in our show notes. Search title, author, state, and country, and do a Command F search. I hope this is the year you consider being a guest on the show. Please visit the FAQs in every episode and you'll realize just how easy it is. We all have something to share. Make 2026 your time to shine. I'm currently juggling several outlines and tentative recording dates. You can be sure our upcoming episodes will showcase amazing school librarians sharing their strategies and resources. I hope you will tune in.